Hi, I'm Sonia Millichamp,
And I'm Melissa Graham Hansen.
and we're here with the West Texas Winds. We're really excited to share with you episode number 1 of our Archives project, where we're going to be going back and looking at some old recitals we've done before. This first one is from November of 2018, and it's a piece by Oscar Navarro called Juego de Ladrones, which means Game of Thieves.
Sonia and I didn't get to play this piece, but we are so happy to present it to you. The performers on this piece include Katie Velasquez on flute, Caryn Crutchfield on oboe, Chris Chance on clarinet, Philip Hill on bassoon, and Scott Millichamp on horn.
We're going to turn it over now to Chris, Caryn, Philip, and Scott to discuss this piece with you and play the recording.
Enjoy.
Hi, and welcome. So first, just to talk a little bit about the piece, Oscar Navarro was a composer that sort of we as a symphony kind of had some connections with. In 2015, I played his second clarinet concerto, having found it online, and he had only written it a couple of years before. So that was kind of my first introduction to Navarro, and also kind of for our symphony. And through being in touch with him, as I prepared the concerto and got the music from him and everything, I saw that he was working on a wind quintet, and he said it was going to be for a specific ensemble. It's for the Zohar ensemble, and they were going to have the rights to it and be the only people playing it. So then after that ended, after a year or two, we were going to be able to play it and just available to the public to buy the piece. So that was kind of how we happened upon it. In between my concerto and the West Texas Winds playing the quintet, he actually asked our symphony to do, I think it was the US premiere of Latent Emotions, which was a violin concerto. And he actually came to Midland, Navarro did, and for that premiere. And so that was a lot of fun. It was a more personal connection between our symphony and the composer. And so then a couple of years later, when the rights became available for everyone, our quintet bought Juego de Ladrones and prepared it, and that's the recording that you're going to hear today. Well, the front is La Venta, Oscura, which is the dark and shadowy tavern where the two the heroes of this meet for the first time and decide what they're going to do with their lives, basically. It's a Cervantes novel, I believe, isn't it?
I think so.
Originally? Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who, of course, wrote the famous Don Quixote. And so the first movement just kind of sets the stage and gives this dark and shadowy mood where our two would-be heroes meet for the first time. And that movement actually connects into the second movement.
Yeah, so in the second movement, we have this this seamless transition. It almost sounds like it's all one movement, but the second movement is marked by just the bassoon plays the low C by itself, and then the flute carries this C sustained into the next movement. And then we have almost the same colors of these small short notes jumping around, and it's all this creepy sort of eerie sound continues, but it's all faster and just a little bit louder, so you can feel the intensity growing as we get further and further into the second movement.
Second movement also has a lot of these irregular meters, a lot of 7/8 time that kind of gives it a feeling of being a little off kilter.
I remember one particular thing about this movement is, after a while of playing this kind of music, this more modern classical music, where you start to get used to the time signatures changing a lot. I've found this particular movement to be a little unpredictable, actually, when the time signature changes. Sometimes you can start to recognize a pattern, And with this one, I definitely did recognize a pattern, but there were just a couple places where I wanted to go from 4/4 to 7/8. So in other words, 8 beats in a measure to 7 beats in a measure, but that measure was actually still eight beats in that measure. So I found myself writing in over again, that measure is there's still 8 beats in there. So just be careful and make sure I count all 8 and I don't count my rests improperly. I remember spending a lot of time making sure that, I think it was the horn and the bassoon and maybe one other instrument, we all kind of mixed and matched where we would play within those 8 beats, and we didn't want to step on each other's toes and throughout there.
Yeah, I can always tell where my thought process was, because I try and mark all of my music the same way every time. Like if it's something that I just keep missing, like if it's a rhythm or something, I will circle it. And that's the only thing a circle means for me usually. And I don't know if you can see them, but I have all these like circled dotted quarter rests. Like there's another one. There's another one, like all over the place. Don't miss it. It's just a dotted quarter rest. It's not, so that would go back to like it not being in 4/4 time. So.
Yeah. Well, and the switching back and forth so much and the sort of quirky feel of it really paints the picture of the two main characters of the story. And that's the title of the movement is Rinconete y Cortadillo, are the two little would-be thieves who want to move to Seville and make their fortune being mischievous and having fun at others' expense.
Yeah, I enjoyed listening back to this piece so much because I just enjoyed playing it. And this movement, I remember just enjoying the quirkiness and it was just had really great music in it. And even though it was hard, it was like enjoyably hard. It wasn't hard just to be like, oh, it's so hard. It was like, oh, but I love it. It's so hard and I love it. So.
I think this piece in general for me goes down as, we have, as a musician, we have lots of different kinds of music we play. As far as the genre, that's something that's more apparent. But in terms of how rewarding it is when you perform it, we have music this is pretty easy music. I can just practice it a little bit and then rehearse and then it's good to go. And then you have music where it's the opposite of that. You have to spend lots and lots of time working on it. And sometimes, a lot of times that does play into how much you like it. Obviously, if the music isn't too hard, it leaves more room to enjoy the piece. And then if the music is really, really hard, it's also kind of hard to like it because it's giving you so much stress in the practice room or at home working on the music. But this piece was right in the middle for me. Not just the second movement, but the whole thing. It was very difficult, very challenging, and we had to consider so many things putting this music together. But it's so rewarding. I think it's just the way Navarro uses the 5 instruments, the way he uses harmony, texture, tempo, dynamics. I think it's very, very exciting.
Well, as we move into the next movement, the third movement is Sevilla. And with Sevilla, it's where they're going to Seville and they are thinking about what it's going to be like. It's this beautiful city. When they finally get there, what it's going to be like. And this piece is so beautiful. It's the slowest, well, it's not probably the slowest, but it's a slow movement. And it just gives everybody in the quintet a time to shine. And I love that so much. Like when, like I have one of the first melodies, but then the flute also plays it. And then we join the horn, the flute and oboe join the horn in some really, really special moments. And then the bassoon takes the melody at one point. And I must say that this key signature is a little daunting sometimes because the key of D flat gets us into, like the key signature isn't in D flat, but it has definitely D flat like runs and stuff. And on the oboe, that's one of the more challenging key signatures just because we are using a lot of alternate keys, a lot of alternate fingerings. That's not a key signature that just plays really well on the oboe. So low notes too, where you're like, okay, just sit perfect and don't look anywhere but right where you're looking so that you don't hit anything else that you're not supposed to hit. And so in the middle of it being like so beautiful, and one of my favorite movements, like honestly, there's the point where Scott, we join the horn and you're playing something, and then the oboe and flute, they take turns, but we join you in that melody going up, and I love it so much. It's one of my favorite. I could just like, in the old days when we played on cassettes, I would probably rewind that just enough so that I could play it again, then rewind it and play it again. That's what I would do there. And then I remembered when there's this part after we play this beautiful melody, and before it comes, it kind of comes back, but then the bassoon and Philip and I had this interesting clapping part back and forth. And I thought it was so interesting how it was written, because it's really just like a 2-against-3 rhythm that's not that hard to do by yourself. But when you're doing that rhythm with somebody else, it's more difficult. And I think that just a recording, I think you could get away with it just being one person doing it. But the aesthetic of having both people like doing the 2-against-3, but it almost sounds like percussion in the recording. It doesn't sound like 2 people clapping. And my part says, clap hands, low sound.
Low sound.
What does that mean? Oh, how I have to cut my hands and.
Right. Well, I remember it was something that he also used in the concerto that I played. There was a moment where I was playing this melody, and it was this vigorous sort of dance-like melody, and we had some people doing like a high clap, and then we had other people doing low claps, and it was like echoing across the orchestra and stuff. So for him to use it here, we who have played his music, you know, a few times already, we're just sort of like, oh yeah, that's what he means when he says low claps.
Right.
But yeah, to see it in the part, if you've never done any Navarro before, is probably like, what?
And I again, with that, I think the aesthetic also is, again, of seeing like people clap in different ways is interesting for the audience. Not only does it produce a different sound, but it produces just a different look between the orchestra. So I listened back to that, and I remembered like, okay, do it again. We got to do it again. Let's do it again. Okay, I think I got it. And then once we had it, it was like, okay, from then on. But it took a little bit of a brain game for that put together. And then I was remembering back through the end of this movement and how we did it many ways. We tried it like, okay, let's try doing this, and let's try doing this. And we finally settled on the way that it was, of course, that we performed it. But there was a lot of thought process that there's probably more thought process in the last 3 lines than the whole piece altogether that we had to work.
Probably, yeah.
Well, because what happens is for those who aren't looking at the music, it enters a kind of fanfare, and it has all of these strong chords, and some of them are held, and it gets really loud, and we get into some dynamics that don't normally happen in quintet, like triple forte. That's usually something you only see in orchestra, where you have like 70 people who can play really, really loud. So we had to figure out, how do we interpret this such that it's effective with 5 people, so that we're not just blowing out our instruments, playing as loud as we can the whole time.
Right.
So yeah, that took a lot of work.
I don't know if you guys can see it, but I still have, we tried about 4 or 5 different things there. I still have them all written down.
Well, and it just went, the last 3 lines went from forte to fortissimo to fortissimo. Like, okay, we got to figure out what to do with that, because there was I remember just working on that a long time. And then I remember too that we didn't want to, because it really sounds like that could be the end of something big and could result in clapping. So I know we were trying to avoid clapping at that point. And so we like jetted right into the 4th movement. From
Yeah.
very much time at the end of that, like swabbing or turning a page or anything like that. Like we went right into 4, and 4 is such a fun movement. It's like this it just reminds me of a chase. And our villains in the story are, this is the name of the whole, say it again, Chris. I can't ever say it right.
The title of the fourth movement, Juego de Ladrones, Game of Thieves.
Thank you. So that's the title of the whole piece. So this is like the whole piece has this title, but then this movement also has the same title. So this is the Game of the Thieves. This is, they're taking people's money, and it really sounds like a chase. It sounds like they're just moving all over town, seeing what kind of mischief they can get into. And I was remembering about this movement, there was a point where we were like all playing back and forth upbeats. And I don't know, do I want to tell our dirty laundry?
We didn't have any trouble. Everything was perfect from the beginning.
Well, we finally fixed it because we're like, what keeps happening? We keep like getting off right here. And all of a sudden we realized that like there was a change, that Scott started playing downbeats instead of upbeats, and horns never do that. So we just, I mean, like, what happens? How do we work with that? So anyway, I remember that because the second Scott said, we have downbeat, I switched to a downbeat. And we were like, oh, okay. And then it was fixed from then on. So it was just one of those interesting things about part writing. But this was such a great movement. I loved it so much.
Well, and just the tempo itself makes it difficult because prestissimo is also not something that we usually see. That's like the extreme of the extreme fastest possible tempo. I mean, presto is supposed to be as fast as possible. So prestissimo is what? Faster than possible?
Faster than possible. Well, quarter was 200. And I remember we felt this with in the half note too. We didn't even feel it in the quarter note because it's just too much in your brain going on there then. So, yeah.
Yeah, this movement was an interesting one that they marked quarter note is 200. It's even with the number, that specific number there, it's so rare to see that. And so when we were rehearsing, we couldn't help but think, well, that number is there for a reason. So we did want to feel the half note because it's easier to feel the half note, which would be 100. And musicians play with a beat of 100 all the time. So it was easy to do that. But we had to decide, how can we make sure we're playing together and playing the right tempo, but still achieving that frantic, uncontrolled sense of prestissimo, quarter note is 200. I mean, if you have a metronome handy, or you turn it on and find 200, or download an app on your phone, because 200 is really, really fast, and it's rare to find music that is that fast. So this was a very exciting movement.
This was a tough moment for breathing too. I don't know if you guys had this with your parts, but I had like 2.5 pages of just solid eighth notes, and it was just a real oxygen challenge to both expel enough air and then retake air back in, because I was playing so quietly and so short for so long. That was a challenge.
Well, not to brag or anything, but I have a 21 measure rest. 21.
One of those luxurious oboe parts.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, actually, I remember now, as I flip my page like this, I all of a sudden get an 8 measure rest. And I remember as soon as I'd flip that page, I'm like, oh, 8 measures. Oh, thank you.
200, which is like,
yeah,
right,
I mean,
eight measures is gone.
Yeah, it's so fast. But anyway, that's the fourth movement. That's sort of the centerpiece of the entire piece. The centerpiece of the entire piece, huh? How about that? That sounds funny. Anyway, so we've had a depiction of Sevilla. We've had a depiction of Rinconete and Cortadillo, these two thieves, and then in the fifth movement we have a depiction of the jefe, the boss, Jefe de Ladrones, who is named Monipodio. That's what the fifth movement is about. And I don't remember if this is correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the bassoon has 4 sort of cadenza-like passages, and those are supposed to exemplify the jefe. That's sort of his theme, or his motive. So,
I think so.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And it's been a little while since we played the piece. I couldn't remember off the top of my head. So yes, this movement starts with this cadenza, and all the cadenzas are the same. They're the same rhythm. They're the same concept. So that's sort of his motive, but they're in slightly different harmonies. And it's always interrupted by this slow sort of ethereal combination of bassoon, horn, clarinet. And then in the middle of this section, this moderato section, we have this exchange between the flute and the oboe. There's these fast notes, and I remember this part being an interesting tempo because it's marked quarter note equals 90, and quarter note equals 90 to me personally is always just a little bit faster than I want it to be. So I just had the downbeats, had boom, 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 boom. So I remember, you know, it's the Jefe, you know, he's this serious, this very assertive person. We wanted to achieve this sort of very serious, heavy sound, but also we didn't want to slow down too much. We didn't want to actually be going slower and slower and slower. So, and then I love this part. After that theme is introduced, then the bassoon and the flute have a melody together, and I just love the sound of the bassoon and the flute together. That's just such an interesting color to me. It's found, I think it's found throughout many eras of classical music, but it's also rare. So we have that. And then the bassoon comes in again, twice with this cadenza representing Monipodio. The third time that this cadenza happens, the other winds join in on this big octave leap. And once again, we get fortissimo, which is almost unheard of in wind quintet literature, but we're doing our best to make it really sound like 3 Fs. And then the end, we have this quick outro that kind of goes back again to that sort of ethereal chord between the bassoon, horn, and clarinet.
Yeah, I always wanted like pictures of an exhibition to happen after that last cadenza you were telling me. It goes up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought. Oh, sorry. What did you say?
I said that's not what happens, obviously. So.
Right. Yeah, we get something that could sound like it was taken from pictures at an exhibition, but that's not what happens.
No.
I was thinking that every single time we did that, but I don't know if I ever said anything because I didn't want to throw off our understanding of this piece. I didn't want to confuse it too much.
Well, then at the end, we just had to time those. We do 16th notes and pass them through everybody. Mm-hmm. Every beat, somebody has a new 16th note coming on.
Oh, right. The last 3 measures.
I was glad to have the first of those, so I didn't have to catch you guys. The easy part.
Yes, I have horn, clarinet, and then that's it. Because I think Katie played after me. I'm sure of it because she played higher. Yeah.
Going back to what Philip was saying about woodwind quintet dynamics, usually the horn in wind quintet doesn't get to play that. You know, we don't usually get to play a true forte for horn, but at the end of going back to the third movement, I think that's about as loud as I've ever had to or gotten to play in wind quintet before, a real fortissimo. So that was fun.
That was your moment.
That's right. But yeah, most of the time we're really scaling down our dynamics.
I remember you saying, I can play louder. It's like, yes, do it. Next time. You wait your whole life for this.
Yeah, and again, speaking of loud, if we haven't really made it clear yet, when we get to the 6th movement, I mean, I think the softest dynamic in the last movement is just the bassoon playing by itself at the very beginning at mezzo piano, and then really after that, at least for my part in the bassoon part, everything is at least mezzo forte, and there's multiple people playing. And when I look at the last 2 pages, I mean, I think the softest thing is fortissimo. So it gets really loud. It gets really, really crazy. And what's really great about this last movement is that this rhythm called sesquialtera, which is an exchange between the time signatures 3/4 and 6/8. So and you'd hear it in the recording, but basically it sounds like da, 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 da. And then it's very, very fast. So just like the fourth movement, this movement is super fast. So actually, I think it's faster. Da, 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 da. So it's a combination of that movement, and then way back to the second movement when we had this these sort of pocketed rhythms, Rinconete and Cortadillo, sort of scheming and thinking of all the mischief they're gonna go about in Sevilla. So it's very clever how Oscar Navarro weaves these two ideas in and out of each other. We have this Juego de Ladrones, game of thieves, mixed in with the theme of the actual two thieves, how they're going to go about their business, and just listen closely and see how the theme of those two men kind of just comes back at you, and that actually might be the softest moment in the. Besides the bassoon by itself in the beginning, that might be one of the softest moments in the final movement. And then after that, it really just sounds like flamenco. It gets super fast, and we've got 7/8, and everything's accented, and no one's resting ever.
Unisons too, and
go ahead.
We had a lot of unison runs in the winds together. Flute, clarinet, and we all had some pretty quick unison togethers. They're pretty fast.
Oh, they were so hard. Yeah, at 200, when you have like 16th notes, that's hard enough. But to have to do it all in unison means everybody has to be right on.
Yeah. Plays well with others. You have to play well with others at that point. I mean, it was fun though. I just love the build up to the end of this piece too, because it just has so much. It's just so enjoyable, and so you get excited playing this music, and I think listening to it too is just as exciting.
Absolutely, it's a really, really special piece, and the audience loved it when we played it, and hopefully we'll all enjoy listening to it again.
Yes, I'm excited to share it with you guys.